In this, our second of our 2 nuggets on project cost management, our focus is on the execution, controlling the costs of the project, effectively ensuring the project delivers or completes on budget. Making sure that each and every one of the individual costs that have been summed together into the budget through our planning activities are delivered appropriately, and that we have the appropriate management techniques in place to deliver the project on budget.
Cost control is all about managing the budget for your project, managing the project's cost baseline. During the budget planning, we developed a baseline. The baseline said, for this month of this project, we expect to spend $10,000. For month 2 of the project, we expect to spend $15,000. Managing the cost baseline is ensuring that the project expenditures are in line with the cost baseline, and that the expenditures are following the cash management plan that you produced for your project. So cost control is both ensuring that the project delivers within budget and managing the timeline. As we discussed in the previous nugget, you can be in as much trouble as a project manager, and I've been there, let me tell you, as much trouble as a project manager delivering the project on budget but not meeting the cash flow analysis, surprising the accounting department with a bill for $20 or $30 or $50,000 in a month where the cash reserves and the cash management plan wasn't in place, simply because you accelerated the project, simply because you brought in an expense to your project a month or 2 or 3 months earlier than the original cash flow plan. So managing the cost baseline is all about ensuring that you deliver on budget and that you deliver to the terms and conditions of the cash flow plan. Obviously, there will be variances. There will be times when more labor is applied to your project than per plan. There will be time when costs for materials will be higher than planned. There will be time when less labor is put into your project than planned. And hopefully there will be times when materials cost less than planned. There will be lots and lots of variances during the delivery of your project. You need to ensure that you're managing the variances, that you understand the variances, and you're taking the appropriate actions to adjust the cost baseline based on the variances. If there is a run on certain materials, if there's a worldwide shortage of material that you need for your project and the cost escalates at an unpredicted rate, you need to manage the variance and adjust the cost baseline, meet with the project sponsor to say, hey, the material we need for our project has increased in price by 100%. There is a worldwide shortage for our product. It's critical for our project to complete. Do we either A, cancel the project because the costs have exceeded expectations, or do we approve the changes, realize that we need this material no matter what the cost, or at least at this level of cost, and adjust the cost baseline? It's all about managing your budget performance. How are you doing? Are you on time and on budget? Are you on time and ahead of budget? Are you behind and ahead of budget? And we'll discuss some of those issues later in this nugget. Managing the baseline is all about ensuring that all of the charges appropriate to your project are charged to your project, and more importantly, that only the charges that are appropriate to your project are charged to your project. Approve all charges. I've had more than one instance in my career of delivering projects where I've had charges, some small, some large, charged my project that had absolutely nothing to do with my project, simply because of coding errors, simply because of accounting errors. A charge comes into my organization and somebody handwrites the appropriate charge code onto the invoice. They made a mistake. They had sloppy handwriting. Maybe they were deliberately trying to get me, but I don't think that's the case. But the improper charge code was coded onto the invoice. That gets sent forward to accounting. Accounting takes the charge code, enters it into the system, and there you have it. I have a $50 charge, a $50,000 charge, or a $50 million charge. It doesn't matter the size. If the charge is inappropriately coded, the charge is going to go against my project. Therefore, it's important that you review all charges. Let me repeat that you review all charges against your project to ensure there are no errors, to ensure that all of the charges appropriate to your project are being charged to your project, and that only the appropriate charges to your project are being coded. If you're expecting an invoice, or if you know an invoice came in from a supplier, from a vendor, you need to check and make sure that that invoice is coded to your project, that it isn't slipping around the organization and going on process for a period of time. Two reasons for this. One, again, is the time, the cash flow. If you have a large invoice came into the organization for your project, you know the invoice has been received, or you're expecting to receive the invoice. Therefore, your cash management plan says, for this month of my project, I need to be prepared to spend $20,000 for this material. And you look at your accounting sheets at the end of the month and the charges in there. You need to go looking for it to ensure that the invoice has been received. And if the invoice has been received, that it's not sitting idle on someone's desk awaiting approval, or that it hasn't been inappropriately coded, and that the charge is put onto your project in the month that you're expecting it to be charged to your project, as opposed to showing up 2, 3, 4, 5 months later when it finally gets properly coded, and by then your vendor is very annoyed because they've been waiting for payment. So that's the other side of ensuring that all charges are coded to your project and properly allocated to your project. Your vendors are expecting payment. If they supplied $50,000 of material or services to your company, to your project, they're going to expect to be paid for it. If through some internal error in your company they're not being paid, they're not going to be very happy with the results and may not be as anxious to deal with you, the project manager, or with your company the next time around. So ensure you're actively managing all of the charges associated with your project, that you're ensuring all of the right charges are being applied to your project, and that all of the charges are being applied. If you're expecting a charge to your project and it's not there, don't say, wow, I got away with that one. Go looking for it. You're not going to get away with it. Believe me. Again, I've been there. Sometime, somewhere, 3, 4, 5 months later, it's going to get properly coded and going to build to your project, and then you're going to be in trouble because the cash flow management plan is inappropriate. You need to ensure that you're managing all changes associated with the budget for your project. Changes can be of 3 forms. Approved changes. Through the change control process that we've discussed throughout this series, there will be instances where the business has requested a change to the project. We need to add this functionality. We need to make a change here. This is no longer needed. There will be lots of changes throughout the project. You will process those through the existing change management process that we've already discussed, and they will be approved changes. When it's an approved change, it is actually a physical change to the project baseline. If through the change management process you have added a change, incremental value to the project of an additional $15,000, the baseline is now $15,000 greater than the original project baseline. Changes, in fact, do change the baseline. If it's an approved change, you change the baseline. You therefore have a different yardstick within which you are being measured, within which your project is being measured. So those are the easy changes, the easy budget changes to deal with. The approved changes, because they in fact change your project baseline. But you're going to have other changes. You're going to have estimate variances. You expected to spend 42 hours of labor completing this task on your project, where in fact the estimate was bad, you didn't understand the degree and magnitude of the work, and it didn't take 42 hours, it took 82 hours. It took twice as much time to complete the task as expected. That's an estimate variance because you're paying for the resource. The cost variance for that task is going to be double as well. You need to account for and manage estimate variances. Hopefully over the life of your project you will have some plus estimate variances where it's taken more time to deliver your project, i.e. therefore more dollars. Hopefully you will have some minus estimate variances where you were overly pessimistic with the development of your estimate and It took less time, therefore less dollars to deliver the project. There will be some give and take with the pluses and the minuses. You need to understand what the net of the pluses and minuses are going to be, and alert management, alert your sponsor that says, there have been problems on my project as a result of bad estimates. And there's no shame in saying there were bad estimates. Remember what an estimate is? An estimate is your very best guess. Yes, it is a guess. An estimate is your very best expectation guess of how long, how much labor it's going to take to do each and every element of your project. Therefore, there will be variances. You need to manage the variances. That's the key. You need to manage the variances, the pluses and the minuses on the estimates, and at an appropriate period of time, not on a daily basis, too often, too micromanagement, probably not on a weekly basis, potentially on a monthly basis, depending on the length of your project. If it's a relatively short project, monthly may be appropriate. To rationalize the pluses and the minuses, and to alert management that says, hey, I'm expecting a variance of $5,000, $10,000, whatever the price is going to be, over the baseline because I've had estimate variances. For longer projects, quarterly may be a more appropriate time frame. To alert management, to alert the business sponsor that says, there have been estimate variances. I've done my very best as a project manager. I've taken the appropriate actions as a project manager to try to improve the environment my team is working in. But there are estimate variances. We are going to cost more. So what are we going to do about it? That's the next step that you need to ensure that you're doing when you're managing the baseline, you're managing your budget. There will be variances. The project is going to cost more, all things being equal. So what are we going to do about it? Are we going to accept the fact the project is going to cost more? Are we going to change the scope of the project to bring the costs in line, deliver less functionality? Or are we going to change the timeline, if that is appropriate for adjusting the variance, saying I no longer have to pay overtime, or I can bring in less expensive staff and do the same work over more time? But what are you going to do about your estimate variances once you have accumulated all the pluses and minuses and have a more realistic understanding of what the new project costs are going to be? And the same basically applies for price variances. You need to buy materials, you need to buy supplies for your project. Going in, you obtained quotes from vendors. This is your expectation of how much material A is going to cost. This is your expectation of how much material A you need. So you have a cost per unit, you have a number of units, and that gives you your material cost. During project delivery, the dollars per unit could change, positively or negatively. The number of units required by your project may change, again, positively or negatively. But it's your job as a project manager to ensure that you're managing all of these price variances for materials and supplies. You understand the difference. Again, you accumulate them on the appropriate basis, probably monthly for short duration projects, probably quarterly for longer duration projects, and then you work with management to do with the, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to accept the budget overrun? Are we going to change the scope, the functionality, to try to deliver within the original costs with less function? Maybe changing the timeline again can help you give budget relief. Once you work with management, once you determine what the appropriate action is going to be to provide the budget relief, you then have an approved change to the project. You have worked with management, the sponsor, and you say, we're going to reduce functionality. Because you are now changing the scope for the project, you now have a change request. And the same as business originated approved changes, you now have an approved change, which in fact is going to change the project baseline. The change request for reducing scope is going to allow you to deliver your cost baseline within the original plan, but the reduced scope is going to change the scope baseline. or the change request is going to result in a change to the time baseline. But you need to manage the costs. You need to understand what the impact of the costs on your project is going to be, and you need to take the appropriate actions to ensure that you're managing the costs for your project actively. As we just discussed, it's important to manage the variances. You do that by gathering the facts. And you'll note by the way I've written facts, I think facts are very important. I often think of myself as a project manager as a detective interviewing suspects, trying to understand what happened, trying to get at the root cause. My favorite expression is "just the facts, ma'am, just the facts," which makes me think of the detective series of Columbo, where this little man in the trench coat went around interviewing his suspects and saying, "Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts." You're talking to a project team member who was responsible for delivering a project task that had an estimate of 42 hours and was actually delivered in 84 hours. It took twice as long. Why was there a variance? As you're gathering the facts and working with the team members, you need to ensure you're asking the why questions in a non-threatening fashion. You're not asking why so you can punish the team member for going over. You're asking why so you can correct the problem. Why did it take so long? Don't you have the right tools? Do you not have the right environment? What can we do from a project situation to deliver a better environment that we can correct the problem so that we can stem instances where we're going over budget, where it's taken us twice as long to deliver project components as anticipated? Or we're gathering the facts that simply says the estimate was bad. We did an estimate, we thought it was 42, all of the tools, all of the environment are correct, but it's simply not enough. We are going to have to accept the fact that the project estimate, at least in this particular instance, was bad, and we need to understand that there will be instances where this happens, that there is no corrective action, and you simply accept the fact. Going forward, we are now 42 hours over on our budget, which means we're 42 hours worth of labor over on our budget. Leads us into the variance analysis. What are the pluses? What are the minuses? How often do we need to review? How often do we need to understand to work with the project team, to work with the project team members, to do the proper variance analysis, to again understand why, effectively doing a root cause analysis, and to understand what can be done to improve the project delivery scenario. Then we get into trend analysis. Trend analysis, it delivers this over time. If you can excuse my drawing capabilities, trend analysis is putting it on a graph. So we have time on one axis, and we have dollars on the other axis. And for the purpose of simplicity, I'm going to draw our project budget as a simple straight line. In reality, your project baseline is not going to be a straight line. There's going to be variances as costs ramp up over time and flatten out, and another ramp up and a flattening out as your project scenario changes, as team members come and leave the project, as large material purchases and large supply purchases come in on your project. But for the sake of discussion, let's stick with a straight line. Then you're going to plot your actuals against your baseline. And let's say we're starting off that our actuals are trending below our baseline. A very good situation, and the actuals are following a parallel path to the baseline. Does this mean that our project is going to deliver under budget? It may mean, but as you're doing your trend analysis and doing this over time, all of a sudden you realize that it's trending upwards. And we have now passed the baseline, and it may be that the project is heading for trouble. If it continues in an upward direction like that, absolutely the project is in trouble, and we need to take actions. But let's say that it trends upwards, and then it flattens out, and again, it's going absolutely parallel to our project baseline. What this is telling us is at the beginning of the project, we were in very much the minus situation. We were delivering our project under budget. It may mean we didn't have our full complement of team members as per the plan. It may mean we didn't bring in the supplies and materials quite as early as expected. And then all of a sudden at this point, our catch-up point, we have brought in the additional team members, we have brought in the additional supplies, and we're now very much in a plus situation. And if we continue again on a parallel path, it may mean the project is going to deliver absolutely exactly on budget, which is a good thing. But again, that's where trend analysis comes into play. How are you doing overall? Now, if we continue the trend analysis, I'm going to cause our project to have a little heartache here, and all of a sudden, our project is now trending significantly away from our project baseline. We're in the latter stage of our project, and all of a sudden, we're getting significant variances from our project baseline. It may mean the test or the completion activities are varying significantly from plan, significantly from baseline, and in fact, this is telling us that we have a project delivery problem, and we then need to take actions with the sponsor to address the project variances. So again, you need to do this over time. If you're doing your trend analysis over time, and in month 1 and month 2 and month 3 of your project, you're seeing that you're trending positively away from the baseline, i.e. you're delivering under baseline budget, you may want to alert the stakeholders that at this point in time, the project is under budget, but because you did your variance analysis, but we're understaffed. So again, you're doing your trend analysis, you're managing the variances, and you're telling the project sponsors, don't get excited, we're understaffed, which is probably going to mean either we're going to be late or we're going to consume later. Which is in fact exactly what our project did. At month 4 in our project, we have begun the additional consumption. We brought the additional materials, we brought the additional team members in, and now, although we're trending away from the budget line, the net, for the sake of simplicity, is 0. So upwards to this point in time, I know my graph is getting a little sloppy here, at month 7, we can probably say the project is absolutely on budget. And speaking of being on budget, a term that I've picked up that I like, our project is on budget-ish. I don't think there's ever a situation where a project is absolutely on budget to the penny. So therefore, when I say I'm on budget, I'm saying I'm on budget-ish. It's around about the budget. It's within the tolerance factor of what my project sponsor, what my project management plan says. I'm on budget if I'm within 5% of budget, or I'm on budget if I'm within 8% or 10%, or whatever your budget tolerance for the project is going to be. So at month 7, you can write another status report that says we're on budget-ish. And that's because I have done the consumption later, I have brought the additional team members in, and now the project looks very successful. You're managing the variances, you're doing the trend analysis, you're putting it into a proper time perspective, and you're truly doing a good job of managing your budget. Now the trouble hits. Now you're seeing the significant variance from your baseline. You do your gathering of the facts, you do your variance analysis, you understand why, you see what you can do to improve, and maybe this is one of those situations where we hate to be in as a project manager. We understand why, that the testing activities are taking longer, it's taken longer to complete the project than anticipated. There's nothing we can do, I can't bring in any more tools, I can't change the environment, I simply have to accept the fact that it's going to take longer, i.e. more dollars to complete the project. And then I would write my status report that says, looks like, probably better term than that in your actual formal status report, we're over budget, and here's why. So manage the variances, don't be Chicken Little, don't say, we're under budget, hooray, hooray, hooray. You understand why. Don't be Chicken Little that says, oh, all of a sudden I'm spending more than baseline. I know why I'm spending more than baseline, because at this point in time, with the first week of positive trending away from the baseline, and I use positive in small quotation marks, it's greater than, trending away from baseline, it's not time to be Chicken Little saying, it looks like, but after week 2 and week 3 and week 4, there is an absolute trend here. It looks like we have a very bad variance trend happening. You start to do your root cause analysis, you start to gather the facts, and then after you've done the appropriate trend analysis, you then come back and report on why and what the appropriate corrective actions should be. In managing the budget performance, we actually tie budget and schedule together. Simply knowing whether you're on budget, ahead of budget, behind budget, it's an interesting fact, but it doesn't mean much unless you put it into relationship with schedule. The same thing, being ahead of schedule, being behind schedule is an interesting fact, but when combined with budget, it gives you more interesting information. So obviously our ideal target for any project is to be on time-ish and to be on budget-ish. But even with the ishes thrown in, very rarely achieved. So in simplicity, we can be in 4 different states. We can be ahead of budget or ahead of schedule and over budget. We can be ahead of schedule and under budget, behind schedule and over budget, and behind schedule and under budget. Where are you on your project, and what's the implications of each of these? Being ahead of schedule and over budget may not be a bad thing. Why is it not a bad thing? If you're ahead of schedule, it means your project is being delivered early, which probably means you have more resources on your project, that you're buying the materials and supplies for your project faster, which may mean being over budget is acceptable. May not be, but it may be. Being ahead of budget and ahead of schedule and under budget probably is a good thing. But again, you need to look at it in the overall picture. You need to understand what the overall implication of the project is. But again, being ahead of schedule, that's a good thing. Being under budget is a good thing, provided there's no gotchas, there's no issues, there's no unforeseen or yet to be scheduled problems to come up as a result of taking shortcuts, as a result of buying inferior material. But overall, I would be very happy as a project manager to be in a position where I'm ahead of schedule and under budget. If I'm behind schedule and over budget, that's probably not a position I want to be in as a project manager. I'm behind schedule and I'm spending more money than I should be. That is probably, almost without question, an issue for project delivery concerns. But on the other side of it, if we're behind schedule and under budget, which is really the first scenario we looked at in our trend graph, where we were under-consuming on our budget, which probably meant we were behind schedule simply because we hadn't brought the full complement of team members in. But if you remember from our time variance analysis, we quickly caught that up halfway into our project, and we went back to being on time and on budget-ish until we hit our final phase where we had our testing concerns. So again, managing budget performance is where we start to tie budget and schedule together, and we look at the two of them in relationship to each other, recognizing we can be one of these 4 states, and then we need to do the specific analysis of saying whether being ahead of schedule and over budget is a good or a bad thing, because it may be good or bad. If you're ahead of schedule and under budget, it probably is a good thing. That's a position I would like to be in. If we're behind schedule and over budget, that is almost definitely a bad situation, and you need to take actions to correct it. But in either of these, being behind and under, or ahead and over, you need to take additional actions as a project manager to better understand the issues and ramifications of what that means to your total project delivery scenario and overall success for your project. There's a tool called Earned Value Analysis that helps us better understand what the combination of time and budget, and actually adds in an additional component of scope to help us better determine whether this is a good or a bad thing. Earned value analysis is a very sophisticated process, and we will dedicate an entire nugget on earned value later in the series.
This concludes our last nugget on project cost management. This nugget was focused on controlling the costs, managing the budget, tracking each and every cost from the project, ensuring that the costs incurred on our project match to the budget, examining all variances, and understanding why variances exist, putting corrective actions in place to deal with the variances, to ensure variances doesn't happen again. In this nugget, we focused on costs. And the important of the focus on costs is costs, or let's make it the sign that everyone in North America, other countries will have different signs that make the most value, but the almighty dollar is the aspect of the project success or failure that most people are going to focus on. There are many aspects to project success. Is it on schedule? Did it deliver to the quality? Did it deliver to the scope? All of those things will be observed and measured and understood. But my experience is it's that almighty dollar sign that's going to be the most notable. That's the thing that people are going to remember when your project finishes. Did it deliver on budget? Did the project cost us more, or did the project cost us less than originally forecast? As a result of that high degree of attention on successful delivery on budget, we as project managers need to spend considerable time in our project ensuring that we're tracking all the costs against the budget, we're managing the variances, and we are truly in an awesome position to deliver our project on budget.
This concludes our nugget on project budget management. I hope this video has been informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.